Welcome to the Roundtable for Men. I'm your host, Chad Tafts. This podcast is going to be different than what you're used to. It's not a performance. It's a conversation. Right now, that conversation is me speaking directly to you. Eventually, it'll be a group of us sitting around a round table talking honestly about the things we go through as men. This podcast isn't about hot takes. It's not about winning arguments. It's not about proving points. And it's definitely not about pretending we have life figured out. I know that I don't. I've wanted to create this space for a while now. Not just for myself, but for my fellow men. As this space grows, things are going to slow down. The conversations will get deeper. We're going to be very intentional of how we approach certain topics. And we're going to reflect honestly here. This space is for men who are constantly under pressure. And if you're anything like me, that pressure never really turns off. It's for those of us who are always on. The ones who wake up every day carrying weight we didn't put down the night before. You wake up as an individual, and within seconds you're switching roles. You go from being you to being dad to being a problem solver to being a provider to being a partner. There's no true transition period. No moment to breathe. No time to rest. By the time you even walk out the house, you've already spent a portion of your emotional energy. And it doesn't stop there. After the kids go off to school, we switch again. To employee or to employer. We take on work stress. We carry it through the day. And it doesn't end when we leave the office. We carry it on the drive home. We unintentionally bring it to the dinner table. It shows up in our patience. Or our lack of it. Most of what we carry quietly. And quiet never means calm. A lot of the time, quiet means we're projecting strength. While screaming on the inside. People think we're fine because we don't say otherwise. We carry things quietly. We push through. We handle it. Not because we're hiding something, but because that's what we were taught. By our fathers. And by society. These are the conversations that usually happen at night. After your family's gone to bed. When the house is finally quiet. When the chaos of the day fades. That's when everything comes crashing down. The doubts. The questions you really only ask yourself. And the truth is, most men don't have a place like this. A place where we can speak honestly without feeling like we have to apologize for how we feel. Not because we don't want to talk, but because we don't always know where to put what we're carrying. As men, we need to learn how to slow down, to listen to what's coming from our hearts, to find people we can trust to listen and to lean on when we need them. So if you're still here, you didn't find this by accident. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you're carrying a pressure you haven't named yet. Or maybe you're just trying to be a better man than you were yesterday. This space doesn't require answers. It doesn't require agreement. I just ask you to show up honestly. So wherever you are, driving, working, sitting in the school pickup line, or even sitting at home, take a breath. Get comfortable. And pull up a chair. As men, we're good at talking about the things that don't matter as much. And we do it with ease. We talk about sports. We talk about work. We talk about surface level things. But when things get hard, when the conversations get difficult, We shut down. Some of us even get angry. Others just walk away. We don't talk about the things we carrying deep down. The pressure. The fear. The self-doubt. A lot of us are still carrying things we didn't put down the night before. And those pressures typically don't come from one place. They stack. There's financial pressure. Making sure all the bills are paid. The lights stay on. And that there's enough left over for what your family needs. There's the emotional pressure. Being the steady one. Being the voice of reason. And in most cases, the voice of common sense. Being the person everyone leans on. Even when you don't feel steady yourself. Then there's identity pressure. This is something I personally deal with all the time. Who am I outside of being a dad? A husband. A provider. Who are we when we slow down? Most men were never taught how to handle these pressures. We weren't taught how to talk about them. So instead of dealing with it, we bury it. We push it deep down. We keep ourselves busy on purpose. We tell ourselves it's not important, that we'll deal with it later. And later almost always turns into never. That's when it starts to leak. It shows up as annoyance, as frustration, as snapping over the little things, as shutting down when conversations get tough, as distance in relationships, as a burnout you can't explain. Most of this doesn't happen because we don't care. It happens because we don't feel safe saying it out loud. And that leads to being overwhelmed. I didn't create this space to try to fix anyone. I'm not a therapist. This is about creating a space through the device you're listening on right now, where you can pause your day and become aware of yourself. A space to slow down, to think, to reflect without being judged or rushed. Because clarity doesn't come from someone else. It comes from being honest with yourself. So I want to ask you something. Don't answer it out loud. When was the last time you talked to somebody honestly about the pressure you're under? When was the last time you talked honestly about what you're feeling? And not in a joking way. Not minimizing it. Not dismissing it with our favorite line, "I'm fine." I mean actually releasing it. If just hearing those questions made you uncomfortable, or if you don't know how to answer them right now, this is the space for you. Because you don't need an answer immediately. You need a space where the question can exist. And eventually be answered. Without judgment. When I ask you to pull up a chair, it's not just a catchphrase. I mean it as a decision. A decision to pause whatever you're doing long enough to start this episode. A decision to step into your life instead of watching it from the sidelines. A lot of us live life standing up mentally. Always on the move. Always reacting. Staying busy so our minds can shut down. But standing means you're ready to leave. It keeps you half present. It keeps you protected. And most of the time, you don't even realize you're doing it. When you stay standing, you're not fully engaged in what's in front of you. Sitting means you're willing to stay. It means you're willing to be present. Even when it's uncomfortable. Pulling up a chair is choosing engagement over avoidance. And avoidance is something we're really good at. Not because we're careless, but because slowing down feels risky. And honestly, slowing down scares us. Because when we slow down, our minds kick into overdrive. Doubt shows up front and center. Thoughts that don't show up when we're distracted. Am I doing enough for my family? Am I doing enough at work? Is there somewhere that I'm falling short? Is there somewhere that I could be doing more? Keeping yourself busy can look productive. But a lot of the time, it's just us avoiding what's real. Pulling up a chair also means giving yourself permission. Permission to take a breath. Permission to not fix everything immediately. Permission to sit with your thoughts. Without having to answer for them right away. In day-to-day life, pulling up a chair might look like staying in a conversation instead of shutting down or walking away. It might look like taking a breath and listening to your kid. Instead of immediately correcting them. It might look like sitting with the thought instead of drowning it out with noise. So ask yourself this. Where in your life are you still standing? When you could pull up a chair. Now let's talk about who this podcast is for. This podcast and this space is for men who are trying. Trying to be present dads. Trying to be steady partners. Trying to be reliable friends. Trying to carry responsibility without losing who we are in the process. And something we need to remember as men is this: trying doesn't mean everything has to be perfect. Trying means you care. It means you're paying attention. It means you know when something feels off, even if you don't know how you're going to fix it. When you turn on this podcast and enter this space, it's important for you to understand what is and what is not required of you. You don't need to come in here with the right language. You don't need to agree with everything that's said. And you definitely don't need to have your life figured out. Because I sure don't. Not even close. What is required is that you come into this space with an open mind and an open heart. With respect. With a willingness to listen and learn. With openness to reflection. And what that reflection looks like is entirely up to you. You might sit with it. You might journal about it. You might talk it through with someone you trust. Or you might even do all three. What we need to remember coming into each episode is this: this isn't a debate show. It's not a shouting match. It's not about proving who's right. And it's definitely not about winning arguments. If you're only here to perform, to talk over others, to argue your point without listening, or if you're willing to slow down and take a breath, then this space isn't for you. But if you're willing to sit and learn, if you're open to reflection, if you're genuinely open to learning about yourself, there will always be a chair for you here. I need to make something completely clear here. I'm not an expert. I'm here just like all of you. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to understand what kind of man I am. So I'm going to share a little bit of my story. I grew up with a single dad for some of the most important years of my life. From about the age of 8 until I was 13. My dad was always there for the soccer games. But for the most part, he showed us love by working hard. By making sure we were never without. And that's something I will always be grateful for. But he made it perfectly clear for us that responsibility mattered. Providing mattered. Showing up mattered. I was always expected to work hard. To handle what was in front of me. And to do it without complaining. But feelings, they were ignored. They were buried. After a while, I learned just to push through my stuff that I was dealing with. To keep things inside. To handle the things on my own. And those experiences taught me a lot. They taught me discipline. They taught me work ethic. They taught me how to be reliable for the people around me. But there were a lot of things that it didn't teach me. They didn't teach me how to talk about the pressure that I carry. It didn't teach me how to process or regulate my emotions. They didn't teach me how to ask for the space that I needed when I needed it. And then everything changed when I became a father. Sure, fatherhood increased pressure. But it made it clear how much more important it was to be present. How patience became essential. I started to realize that how I show up matters more than how much I do. And I still wrestle with that daily. That's when the doubts get louder. The question of, am I enough, showed up more often. Every single day, I'm learning something new. Not only about myself, but also about my kids. About my wife. And about how I need to do better as a husband, as a partner. Every single day, I'm wrestling with something different. And most of all, I'm still trying to figure out who I am without pushing them to the side. So here's something I want you to reflect on. What did your home teach you about emotions? This podcast is going to cover real life. Not theoretical ideas. Not online arguments. Real, raw experiences. Not just from me, but eventually from stories that you submit as listeners. And as this space becomes more established, from men who are willing to pull up a physical chair with me, and tell their stories face to face, we're going to end up covering a wide range of topics. Like fatherhood and the pressures that come with it. The importance of presence. The responsibility that shows up the moment you become a father. We'll talk about discipline and routine, not as punishment, but as a foundation. As stability. Not just for ourselves, but for our kids and our partners too. We'll talk about friendship and isolation, about why connection becomes harder as life gets fuller, why making and maintaining friendships takes more intention over time. We'll talk about sports, but not in the typical sense. Meaning this isn't a sports show. Not just scores, not the highlights, not the breaking news. We'll talk about lessons. Lessons about pressure, about leadership, and how people respond to loss. We'll talk about politics and culture. Not in a left versus right way, but in terms of policy. And how decisions and division affect us the most. At our home, at work, as partners, as fathers, and most importantly, as men. I need you to understand something. And this is important. This space is important, not just to me, but also to you as a listener. These conversations will be grounded and reflective. They will not be choosing sides. They will not be driven by outrage. And it's not focused on shock value. Every single conversation comes back to the same question. How does this affect real life? At home, at work, as a father, as a partner, and most importantly, as a man. The tone of this show going forward will be slow and deliberate. Each episode will focus on one or two relatable topics. Which means more depth. More space. And more reflection. This isn't a one and done show. It's not a checklist. It's not a lecture. It's a space. A place for men. The beginning of a brotherhood. And the beginning of a family. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for joining this space. Thank you for making the effort to listen. Thank you for being willing to learn. Showing up for yourself matters. Listening matters. Slowing down to process these conversations matters. Like I said earlier, you don't need to come here with answers. You don't need to agree with everything that's said. Just show up honestly. Show up for yourself. So wherever you are, driving, working, sitting in the school pickup line, or even sitting at home, grab your drink of choice, take a breath, and get comfortable. Thanks again for pulling up a chair. I'll see you next time at the Roundtable for Men.